You are losing right now. Not because you are lazy. Not because you lack talent. Not because life is unfair. You are losing because you are too loud. You are broadcasting your wounds. You are narrating your struggle in real time. You are performing the act of trying instead of executing the act of winning. And the most dangerous part? You don't even know you're doing it. You think talking about the grind is part of the grind. You think posting about the process is part of the process. You think explaining yourself, defending yourself, announcing yourself is strategy. It is not strategy. It is noise, and noise is the enemy of conquest. There is a breed of human being that history has produced in very small quantities. They are not the loudest in the room. They are not the most charming. They do not inspire you at dinner parties. They do not post quotes about discipline on their Instagram stories. You barely notice them until the moment they have already won, and by then it is too late. You are already inside their territory, and you don't even remember walking through the gate. These are the warlords, not men of war in the crude physical sense, men of war in the deepest strategic sense. Men whose minds operate like siege engines. Slow, deliberate, inexorable. They do not rush. They do not react. They do not explain. They position, they wait, they strike, and they win. Every time. Machiavelli understood this creature intimately. He studied them. He dissected them. He wrote about them not with admiration but with cold clinical precision. He understood that the prince who survives, the leader who actually accumulates and holds power, is not the one with the best intentions or the most inspiring vision. It is the one who masters his own mind before he attempts to master the world. And the mastery of the mind begins with one discipline that is so simple and so brutally difficult that almost no one can sustain it: silence. Strategic, weaponized, absolute silence. Not just with your mouth, with your face, with your body, with your choices, with the stories you tell yourself when no one is watching. Today, we are going to perform a transplant. We are going to remove the civilian mind you were given and install the warlord mind you need. This is not a motivational speech. Motivation is for people who still need someone else to light the fire. This is a technical manual. And when we are done, you will look at your life differently. You will look at your conversations differently. You will look at your enemies differently. You will look at your own thoughts differently. Because a warlord does not live in the same reality you live in. He lives in the reality he constructed. And the first break of that reality is always the same. Shut up. Let's start with the way you think. Because the problem is not your actions. The problem is upstream of your actions. The problem is the architecture of your mind. Most people think reactively. Something happens to them, and they respond. Someone challenges them, they defend. Someone doubts them, they explain. Someone attacks them, they retaliate or collapse. They are permanently on the back foot, permanently in response mode, permanently playing the game that other people set up. This is not thinking. This is being a pinball. The world flicks you, and you bounce. You have no trajectory of your own. You have only the trajectory of whoever hit you last. A warlord does not think reactively. A warlord thinks architecturally. He does not ask, "What is happening to me?" He asks, "What am I building?" He does not ask, "What do they think?" He asks, "Where do I need to be standing in 6 months?" He does not ask, "How do I respond to this attack?" He asks, "Why is this attack happening? What does it reveal about the weakness of the attacker? And how do I use this moment as a brick in my structure?" Do you see the difference? The reactive mind is a victim of the present. The architectural mind is an engineer of the future, and you cannot build anything real, anything lasting, anything powerful while you are still reacting. Machiavelli wrote about this distinction with brutal clarity. He observed that most rulers, most men of ambition, destroy themselves not through a single catastrophic mistake, but through 1,000 small reactions. A slight from a rival triggers an impulsive response. A public embarrassment triggers a desperate act of image repair. A failed strategy triggers frantic pivoting and announcement of the next plan before the ink is dry. Each reaction costs them credibility. Each reaction reveals their anxiety. Each reaction teaches their enemies where to push. The warlord prince, in contrast, absorbs. He watches. He waits until he fully understands the terrain before he moves. And when he moves, it is decisive, it is overwhelming, and it appears to come from nowhere, because it came from a mind that no one could read. Here is the first law of warlord thinking. You must treat your mind like a classified operation. Think of the most critical military operation you have ever heard about. The planning took years. The intelligence was gathered in total secrecy. The participants were forbidden from discussing it outside of strict need-to-know channels. No leaks, no previews, no press releases. The world only found out it happened when it was already over. That is how you must treat your ambitions, your strategies, your plans, your moves. Not because secrecy is cool, not because mystery is an aesthetic, but because every word you speak about what you intend to do is a transfer of power away from you and toward the world's ability to resist you. When you tell someone what you are going to do, you have done several things simultaneously. You have given them the opportunity to doubt you, which will seep into you whether you admit it or not. You have triggered their subconscious need to protect their own position, which means they will, quietly, without even realizing it, undermine you. You have released pressure from your system, the internal pressure that was going to force you to act, and replaced it with a dopamine substitute, the feeling of being understood, of being seen, of being validated. And that substitute will kill your hunger. You will feel like you have already moved, but you have only spoken. Nothing has changed. The world has not shifted 1 inch in your direction. But your drive has already been bled. The warlord hoards that pressure. He never speaks before the move is made. He walks into rooms and says nothing of value about himself, his plans, his ambitions. He listens. He observes. He files information. He is always learning the terrain while showing nothing of his own map. When the warlord finally acts, it lands like a verdict. Not a proposal. Not a hope. A verdict. Done. Irreversible. Already won. Now, let's talk about the second law. The warlord has no emotional investment in being right. He only has investment in being effective. This sounds simple. It is the hardest thing in the world to actually practice. Most people are deeply, pathologically attached to being right. They will sacrifice the outcome of a situation to preserve the feeling of winning an argument. They will blow up a business relationship to avoid admitting a mistake. They will hold a strategy that is clearly failing simply because abandoning it would feel like defeat. They confuse their ego with their judgment. And because of that confusion, they make catastrophically bad decisions every single day while believing they are thinking clearly. A warlord has performed surgery on this part of himself. He has removed the part that needs to be right and replaced it with a single cold question. Is this working? If it is working, continue. If it is not working, stop, analyze, adjust, continue. There is no emotion in this process. There is no shame in saying this approach failed. The warlord does not identify with his approaches. He only identifies with his objective. The approaches are just tools. You do not mourn a broken hammer. You pick up another tool. Machiavelli called this virtue. The ability to impose your will on the chaos of reality through relentless adaptability, not through rigid adherence to a plan that reality has already rejected. The man who cannot admit he is wrong is not strong. He is brittle. He is one unexpected blow away from total collapse because his entire psychological structure depends on the story that he is never wrong. Remove that story. Replace it with this one. I am always learning. I am never finished, and I will do whatever it actually takes. That is the Warlord story. The third law is the one that separates the amateurs from the operators. The Warlord controls the pace of every interaction, every negotiation, every conflict. He never lets another person's urgency become his urgency. He never lets another person's timeline become his timeline. He never lets another person's emotional state infect his emotional state. Think about the last time someone came at you in anger or desperation, and you caught their energy. You escalated, you rushed, you responded in their tempo, on their terms, inside the frame they constructed. And the moment you did that, you lost. Not necessarily the argument, but the power. Because you demonstrated that you can be moved, that you can be pulled out of your own center by the application of enough emotional force. And that information, once seen, will be used again and again by anyone who wants to control you. The Warlord operates at his own pace, always. When attacked, he slows down. When pressured, he pauses. When given an ultimatum, he becomes very still and very quiet and very deliberate. Not as performance, as structure, as genuine, internally anchored refusal to be swept off his footing. He has trained himself to read urgency in others as data, not as a trigger. Someone's desperation tells him about their position, their weakness, their fear. He uses that information. He does not mirror it. Machiavelli observed that the ruler who can be rattled will be rattled repeatedly by anyone who figures out the rattling mechanism, and everyone will figure it out, eventually. So the only protection is to dismantle the mechanism entirely, to do the deep internal work of becoming genuinely unmovable. Not because nothing matters, everything matters to the Warlord, but because he has decided in advance that he will choose his responses, not inherit them. The fourth law is about information. The Warlord is a voracious, relentless student of reality, not the reality he wishes existed, not the reality he was told exists. The actual, cold, observable, verifiable reality of the terrain in front of him. He studies his enemies not to hate them but to understand them with scientific precision. He studies his own failures not to punish himself but to extract the lesson and install the correction. He reads, he observes, he asks questions and listens to the answers. He is never done learning because the moment you decide you already know enough, you have begun to lose. Machiavelli spent years in exile, stripped of power and position, and he did not waste a single day of that time. He used his isolation to study history with a ferocity that bordered on obsession. He read the Romans. He read the Greeks. He dissected the campaigns of Cesare Borgia. He turned his powerlessness into the most powerful political treatise in human history. He was gathering intelligence on the nature of power itself. And when he wrote The Prince, he was not writing theory. He was writing a manual assembled from 1,000 autopsies of ambition, both victorious and destroyed. That is your model. You are always in study, even in defeat, especially in defeat. When you lose, do not look away from the wreckage. Walk into it. Examine every piece. Find the exact point of failure. Label it. Learn it. Because that failure contains intelligence that your competitors have not purchased. They will make that mistake. You will not. You already paid for the lesson. The fifth law is the final one, and it contains everything. The warlord wins in his mind before he wins in the world, not through visualization in the soft, wishful sense, but through preparation so thorough, so systematic, so obsessively complete, that by the time he enters the real arena, he has already lived through every likely scenario. He has already made the hard decisions in simulation. He has already rehearsed the reversal, the betrayal, the unexpected blow, the moment where everything falls apart. And he has already decided, in the silence of his own mind, that he will continue, that he will adapt, that he will find the new angle and execute. This is why the warlord appears calm when others are panicking. Not because he is numb, but because he has already been here in his mind 100 times. The chaos that shatters the unprepared is simply a scenario he already rehearsed. He does not need to figure out what to do. He only needs to execute the decision he already made. And that gap between the person who is figuring it out in real time and the person who is executing a pre-made decision, that gap is the difference between survival and conquest. Shut up. Stop narrating. Stop announcing. Stop explaining. Stop defending. Stop performing the act of trying. Go into the dark. Go into the silence. Go into the work. Let the world wonder what you are doing. Let them speculate. Let them doubt. Let them write you off. You are not here to manage their perception of you. You are not here to be understood. You are here to win. And when you win, which you will, when it is done and the position is taken and the ground is yours, they will ask how. And you will smile, and you will say nothing. Because a warlord does not explain his victories any more than he explained his plans. He simply occupies the territory. He simply holds the ground, and everyone else works to understand it after the fact. You already know which part of you needs to die for this to begin. The loud part. The part that needs witnesses. The part that needs approval before it acts. Kill it. Not tomorrow. Right now. Silence it. And in that silence, for the first time, you will hear the only voice that was ever worth listening to. The cold, clear, patient voice of your own strategy. Now go build, in the dark, without applause, without permission, like a warlord.